Well, hi, everyone. It's Dr. Paul Feuerstein, Editor-in-Chief of Dentistry Today, and you are not watching Sirius FM Hair Nation. I am here with Dr. Jeffrey Gurian from New York City, and our common ground is we both almost got thrown out of dental school because of our hair, mustaches, and beards. And Jeffrey's a unique character in dentistry and a unique character in the whole big world. He's actually a professional comedian, comedy writer, a YouTube sensation, and more. And you might be sitting here going, who the F is Jeffrey Gurian? Well, I'll tell you something. When we're done with this video, you go onto Google and type in, who the F is Jeffrey Gurian? And you will get more information about Jeffrey. So, Jeffrey, who the F are you?
No one actually knows, but that whole dental thing was just a rumor, Paul. And you know when it started?
What?
The day I graduated from dental school. And it never let up. That whole thing, they kept accusing me of being a dentist all those years. It was when I was writing for Joan Rivers, she didn't know, and I thought she knew. And she called me one morning from Las Vegas, and my nurse had strict instructions: never interrupt me when I'm with a patient unless it's for show business. She would come in and she'd say, you know, Dr. Lewis is on the phone, like if Jerry Lewis called me, Dr. Burr is calling, Milton Burr, Dr. Rivers. The only one no one believed was Dr. Dangerfield. No one believed that there could be a Dr. Dangerfield. So she calls me one morning and she's like, what do you do during the day? And I said, well, I work. And she said, well, obviously you work. What is it that you do? And I knew she knew because there had been a lot of TV stuff about my multiple careers. So I said to her, is this concerning the vicious rumor going around that I'm a dentist? I said, Joan, I've heard of accusing people of a lot of things, but that's really low. And she just laughed. She goes, why didn't you tell me? And I said, because nobody hires you in show business because you're a dentist. They hire you in spite of it. And she loved it. She thought it was great that she had a comedy writer who was a dentist. But
well, the worst thing that happens to me is if I go to a comedy show and they say, so what do you guys do? And the last thing you want to say to a comedian is, I'm a dentist.
Right. Yeah,
I usually say, I have a workshop. I work on small things. That's all. I leave it at that.
That's a perfect answer. Otherwise, they rip you apart.
So I just have to say that Jeffrey is all over the place. You can go to Wikipedia, IMDb, YouTube, Amazon Books. Which, by the way, before we get into the comedy, tell us a little bit about the dental practice and the books that you've written for dentistry, which are really fantastic books.
Well, they're about happiness, really. I wound up lecturing to them at Temple University Dental School at the request of the dean. But I'm fascinated by happiness and by about changing a thought. And in my own life, I was a very severe stutterer through my 20s and even into my 30s. After I graduated from dental school, I was still blocking on certain words. Mostly because they took away any self-esteem that I might have had, and they took away all my self-confidence. You know, I have a picture of me in dental school. This was the haircut that I was banned for. I was not allowed to see patients for 3 weeks. They wanted me to drop out of school, and they told me I was a disgrace to the profession. That's a whole other story for another time. But they really tried to ruin me. They wanted me to drop out of school because I had a mustache and sideburns. If they saw you, they would have executed you.
It was very close. It actually almost happened. My classmates will tell you.
Yeah, with no trial, they would have just shot you on the spot. You know, so it was. You know, I've been fascinated. So I cured myself. By the way, as you can see, I no longer stutter. Not only don't I stutter, you can't even shut me up. I talk constantly. But I'm fascinated by the idea that we can change a thought. I worked on myself for years because I realized one day I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to other people, which told me you can't have a disability based on your location. So once I figured out there was nothing wrong with me, I created it. I realized that I could uncreate it as well. And I worked very hard on myself to eliminate thoughts that I was holding that were not valid for me. And that led to my first happiness book called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? It's almost impossible. But so this book became a bestseller on Amazon. I had already done 5 books.
Yeah.
The last book was with Chris Rock about the history of the club where he was discovered by Eddie Murphy, a club called the Comic Strip.
Right.
But then I became fascinated by thought, by writing books to make people happy, because all over the world, that's all people want. Anyone, if you ask people what they want, they just want to be happy, you know. And from the last 3 years, dentists can attest to this, about how many people are cracking teeth and breaking fillings because of stress. They're clenching and grinding. And when I was a clinical professor at NYU, I was in oral medicine and orofacial pain. And my specialty was TMJ, taking away headaches just using my hands. And a lot of you may know Michael Gelb. Michael Gelb was the head of the TMJ department, and he had me lecture to his postgraduate students on my technique of taking away headaches just using energy. No injections, no drugs or anything like that. And so I've been dedicating myself to writing books on thought and conquering fear. So my second happiness book was called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way, because I had to overcome a lot of obstacles myself. The fear of going into dental practice, the fear of being a doctor, fear of being a husband and a father, so many things. I don't know why I battle fear, but I never let fear stand in my way. Fear is a bully, and I needed to let other people know. I confront fear on a daily basis, to the point I challenge myself. In 2019, I gave myself the ultimate challenge. I went to Japan all by myself. It was the scariest thing I could think of to do. And I wound up performing in 2 comedy shows while I was there. I was there for 2 weeks. I was lost every day because I have fears of traveling, but I did it. I conquered my fears, and I never let fear stand in my way. So I wrote that book. The third book in the happiness series is called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration, because I've always been fascinated by people who overcome obstacles in their lives. We're all facing obstacles. Everyone has stuff that is thrown at them, and you can either be crushed by it, or you can draw on some inner strength that you don't even know you have sometime and overcome it. And those things fascinated me. So for 20 years, Paul, I collected real stories from newspapers and magazines of people that overcame tremendous difficulties. And I wrote this book during COVID, because I had COVID double pneumonia. I was in the hospital and I was home for months, literally months. And I like to take a negative and turn it into a positive. So I used the time that I was home to write this book that I had been wanting to write for many years and never really had the time. And they resonate with people. You know, they all became bestsellers on Amazon. And then I got to do radio with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. Are you familiar with Dr. Wayne Dyer?
Sure.
So he became a friend. We did radio to help him promote his a book that he was doing. He's got like 30 books. And I've had an amazing time in that world. You know,
Right.
I spent 20 years on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. And as a dentist, they accepted my work because I told them, I said, as psychotherapist, you're dealing with people who are depressed and have emotional illness. And many of those people are clenching and grinding their teeth, and you have no idea what symptoms they're presenting to you. If they wake up in the morning with neck pain, or they're having headaches, which they think are migraine headaches, you don't know how to treat that as a psychotherapist, but I do. And so they allowed me to become part of the board for 20 years, and I wound up lecturing at energy psychology conferences to psychologists on their field, but they accepted my work, which was amazing to me.
So let's talk about something, a quote that I think I heard on one of the interviews of you, and someone said something, you'll have to give me the actual quote. If you don't have a photo with Jeffrey Gurian, well, give me the quote.
Chris Stefano. Well, a couple of people said it in that video. Who the F is Jeffrey Gurian? Mark Maron said it. Paul Provenza and John Mulaney said it. He said, if you don't have a photo with me or a video interview, then you're not really in the comedy world. Nick Kroll said that he doesn't know anybody that knows more people in comedy than me. And he and John Mulaney had me on their show, the Kroll Show, I'm the first person to be pranked with too much tuna. Have you ever seen that?
I saw that.
They prank people with a big tuna sandwich, and they chose me to be the very first person. So that's a big thing on my resume. The first person to be pranked with too much tuna.
But you go back to into the 80s. I mean, you were writing and working with Jerry Lewis and Rodney Dangerfield and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, even Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, it's funny. I used to, first of all, before Arnold Schwarzenegger was famous, I knew of him because I was very into bodybuilding and I love to read the magazines.
I can tell.
Yeah, I see this guy with this crazy name, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm like, so I used to tell my wife, please don't let this guy ever insult you because I don't want to have to fight with him. And so Saturday Night Live starts. I get my start in comedy from the people on Saturday Night Live, which is a long story. I'm not going to tell it now, but I got invited to one of the early shows. And when I get there, in those days, they had assigned seats. Who's sitting in my seat but Arnold Schwarzenegger? It was ridiculous. Those kind of things happen to me all the time. I had to ask him to move. I said, I'm sorry. I said, you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He goes, yeah. He was so happy to be recognized. And I said, sorry, but you're sitting in my seat. And this huge mountain of a guy, it was apologized. Oh, I'm so sorry. And he moved. Anyway, we exchanged information and I wound up writing for him because at the time he had his first movie called Pumping Iron.
Right.
And he was doing the Mike Douglas show. And I said, I'm a comedy writer. I'll write for you. And I actually have a letter from him thanking me for the jokes that I found long ago on Golden Oak Productions. That was
how funny is that? So tell me a little bit about Comedy Matters and your whole career with that. Well, I shouldn't say career. You're just what you were doing.
Yeah, I started Comedy Matters as a zine. This guy had an online magazine, and he called me. He goes, you know everybody in comedy. You should really be writing about this. This was like in 1999, I think. And ever since, I've been doing Comedy Matters, and I cover comedy shows, and I write about everybody who's performing. So I get invited to all the festivals, like the Just for Laughs Festival, which is the biggest comedy festival in the world. Every year I get to cover the red carpet and interview all the big stars. So last year, Amy Schumer got the award for Comedy Person of the Year. She skipped the entire red carpet. She would only talk to me, Paul. She said, meet me at the party. And we did a really fun interview. And when we were talking about Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, they had a hit show on Broadway called Oh Hello. And during that show, they talk about Curtis Sliwa and the Guardian Angels.
Oh, the Guardian Angels in New York City.
Yeah, well, and he ran for mayor recently, and I used to be his dentist. That's how long I know Curtis Sliwa.
HIPAA.
He doesn't mind. He says it on the radio all the time. About it. He always says he used to patch me up when I got beat up.
Yeah, so, I know. Yeah.
He used to take a lot of punishment. Anyway, in their Broadway show, they talk about Curtis Sliwa. They didn't know we were friends. They made me a jacket to wear to the opening of the Broadway show, an exact replica of the Guardian Angels, but mine says Gurian Angels. If you can see it, wait a minute. It's not.
Gurian. It's twisted. Where's your wardrobe guy? Come on.
It's all twisted. Hold on a minute.
There you go. We got it.
Got it? Gurian Angels, and it's an exact replica of the Guardian Angels. It has their emblem on the front. So I brought Curtis to the show as a surprise to them.
Oh, what a riot.
He wore his Guardian Angels jacket. I wore my Gurian Angels jacket. But I didn't have to wear the beret because of my hair. They didn't make it was so nice of them. They didn't make me wear the beret.
So, yeah. So speaking of your hair, when I've watched some of the comedy shows you've done, and the people you're interviewing go, oh, here comes the hair, and Jeffrey's attached to it. That's your calling card, I guess.
Part of my Bob Saget used to love it. He goes, Jeffrey, your hair looks luxurious tonight. And you know, Judah Friedlander always says, best hair in the business. You know, and Mark Maron, he's the one who opened that video, the Who the F is Jeffrey Gurian. He said, for the last 50 years, he's been in every comedy room in the place, and everyone always says the same thing. Who the F is that guy?
Yeah, who is this guy? And he's the guy with the microphone running around. And it's quite the honor, by the way. When they see you, they go, "Oh, Of course, we'll talk to you, Jeffrey.
It's really very special, Paul.
It's great. No, it's been great. That's what really got me going. So I don't want to run this too long because we have so many stories to tell.
Right.
So let's do this and leave a cliffhanger, because we're going to come back at some other point. And after people have watched the video of who the F is Jeffrey Gurian, we'll come back another time and go into some real details and some real fun stories. I'm sure you have stories on everybody.
Have stories, and everybody can just leave it on this and tell you what very current projects are.
Sure. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm in this documentary about Grossinger's Hotel. They had the Borscht Belt Festival a couple of weeks ago, and I was invited to be on a panel about Grossinger's. We're doing a documentary about those days and all the comedians that came out.
Beverly, the Browns. I remember. I grew up in New York City. I know that stuff.
The Grossinger's had its own airstrip. The restaurant served 1,200 people. It had its own toboggan slide. It was amazing. I opened a comedy club in Southampton. I performed on the opening weekend on July 1st. They had me come on the Saturday night of the opening. It's called Sticks and Stones in Southampton, New York.
Wow.
I just finished a music video for the guy that opens with the Impractical Jokers. It's called Mouth on My Money. If you look on YouTube and you look up Mouth on My Money, you'll see me dancing like a lunatic to this song. And this past Wednesday, I shot a TV pilot called The Raw Side of Comedy. And I'm an exec producer, and I was also the host of the show at Gotham Comedy Club, the nicest comedy club in New York City, holds 300 people. And the owner is my partner, and we're doing this pilot for television called The Raw Side of Comedy, competition/reality show. The rest we could talk about, And last thing, I'm a cover girl.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Sutton Place, a very fancy magazine, Sutton Place magazine. So I got a lot going on, and it's all thanks to dentistry.
Of course. So everybody watching, this is a name you should know, and again, be sure to watch the video. We won't go over it again. And
if they want to know, my website is comedymatterstv.com.
comedymatterstv.com. Maybe we'll put the thing on the
Instagram is at Jeffrey Gurian.
What was that?
Instagram is at Jeffrey Gurian. And if they go on YouTube to see all those videos, everybody from Jimmy Fallon on down is on there. And it's youtube.com/comedymatterstv. 600 videos. You could spend a lot of time watching all the comedy videos.
I've watched about half. Jeffrey, it's always a pleasure sitting with you, talking to you, and we'll see you. I'll see you in New York.
The pleasure is mine, Paul. You're an amazing guy, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.